Minister, I think we've had many damning facts and statistics which show the shameful failure of this government to address the absolutely diabolical housing and homelessness crisis we have in this country. I just want to use some of my time to tell you a bit about the human reality of your failures and the misery that it is inflicting on people. So, watching into this debate at the moment is, I'll shorten her name just to keep her anonymous, she wants to be anonymous, Jackie, a woman who's in her late 50s, and her husband in his late 50s. He worked for a semi-state, worked all his life. They've two teenage daughters, one with special needs. And tomorrow they are going to be in the court, in front of a judge, probably the first time they've ever been in front of a judge, where the landlord that is evicting them on grounds of sale is seeking an district court enforcement order to evict them. Now, I want to underline, this eviction, and they are terrified, is happening during a so-called eviction ban. They've done nothing wrong, paid the rent all their lives, from the home in which their children were born and they have lived since the 1950s. And they have no options. Their income means they're over the social housing threshold, so they're not entitled to HAP. They're not entitled to be on the council list. It is even questionable, because we've come across this and it's uncertain at the moment, are they even entitled to emergency accommodation? Because some local authorities think they're not. They've gone to the banks. Any chance we could get a mortgage to maybe buy the home that is being sold from under us on grounds of sale? No, you're in your late 50s. You'd be retired when you're 65, 66. We can only give you a 7-year mortgage, which obviously you couldn't afford to service. Therefore, that's not an option for you. We ring the council. Is there any mortgage scheme we could arrange here for you to help finance them to buy the house from the landlord who's selling it, from where they've lived all their lives? No. No. Every door shut. So they're looking on, Minister. They were hoping the Senior Minister would be here. I've raised their case on multiple occasions that a miracle, to use Jackie's phrase, she just texted me now, is there any chance before the court tomorrow there might be a miracle? Because otherwise we're going to be living in our car. Now, that is the extent of the failure. And we have said, I mean, you call it the tenant in situ scheme now. They have these names, it's great, right? I mean, I've been asking for 4 years, I didn't call it a tenant in situ, to purchase houses when people were threatened with eviction through no fault of their own. One of the cases in which led me to make that call about 3 to 4 years ago was the St Helens Court situation, where a vulture fund was evicting people on grounds of their own. I don't know if that sale still hasn't happened, despite, I believe, negotiations going on. But in situations like this, again, no, sorry, they're over the social housing threshold, there's no scheme for that, so we're not buying. Can't buy, sorry. Right? This is unbelievable. You cannot tell people in that situation, sorry, we've nothing for you. You could go and sleep on the side of the road. But that's what they are being told. So please deliver the miracle that Jackie and her family and her 2 kids need, because they are terrified. And I mean terrified about what they're facing tomorrow morning. Or another case I've raised again, I don't know how many times, of a young woman with her teenage son in emergency accommodation, sharing a room, a 1-bedroom between them, who works for a state agency looking after vulnerable children, and she's been in emergency accommodation for 4 years. 4 years! And nothing for her, because she's a bit over the threshold. Nothing. They tried to evict her at one stage. We had to fight like Billy-o to stop her from being evicted from emergency accommodation. Nothing on offer for her. I'll give you another case of a couple. The husband was working, but then he got early onset Alzheimer's. So he can't work anymore. But prior to getting Alzheimer's, they got a HAP tenancy, and they had to pay a top-up on that. But when he was working, they could afford the top-up. But now he's got Alzheimer's, he can't work, and his wife can't afford the top-up, and so they're falling into arrears through no fault of their own. But will the council increase the money? Will the government scheme allow to increase the money to pay the rent so they don't fall into arrears, which they're now falling into with a husband who's got Alzheimer's? No. Sorry, scheme doesn't allow it. So what's going to happen to them? What's going to happen to them? And you can add to that all the people who are paying top-ups. Do you know, every time the 4% happens or the 2% happens, the tenants have to swallow that up in top-up payments because they won't increase the payment. The new thresholds on HAP only apply to new tenancies. So the gap between people, what they're supposed to be able to pay, afford to pay, and what they're actually paying is growing all the time, leading more people going to get into trouble with arrears. Sorry, the scheme doesn't allow it. No flexibility there, nothing. Now, the question is very simple, Kieran. Does the minister, do the government have a commitment to stop people ending up homeless, or do they not? Because it is as simple as that. We're not going to allow this to happen. Right? And it's not just about the eviction ban, which should be an absolute no-brainer. But I've just told you there are many people who that doesn't apply to. No, the government's position and the instruction to the local authorities is very simple. We are not allowing anybody to end up homeless. And we are going to do whatever is necessary to make sure that that happens. And nobody should be put through this sort of misery. Or people with extreme medical conditions. I have a pile of them at the moment. With children with desperate medical conditions, seeing multiple consultants and so on for their children, dealing with the most horrendous situations you could imagine, and they put in for medical priority. Do you know how long it takes to process medical priority in Dunleary right down now? Just to have your application processed takes about 9 months. It's incredible, the suffering that people are going through. Now, the government could do something about this, Minister, but they're not doing it. So I appeal to you, do something about these cases. Stop people being evicted into homelessness. Control the rents. Do something about the empty property. You can do these things if there's a will, but sadly there is no will.
No.